Hi, everybody. It's Thursday, September 3rd, 2015, and welcome to the Alien Invasion number 156, a production of Galactic Netcasts. I'm Dave Nelson. Joining me, as always, Brad Ludwig, Anessa Moyens. How you guys doing?
Pretty darn good.
Doing all right. I'm Batman.
Yeah. For those people watching, either live or later on YouTube, you can see both your faces now. You got some kind of fancy software thing going on, don't you, Brad?
Yeah,
Yes.
some newfangled stuff from the internets that makes this magic possible. Thank you, Manycam.
Yeah, it's Manycam. I've used it before. It's a pretty neat program. Before, the view was the side of your desk, and now it's Brad on top of Anessa.
Bam!
I mean,
The way God intended.
I like it. Wait, what?
Brad's box is on top of Anessa.
Wait a second.
That's worse.
Moving on now. What is this show about, Dave?
Hey, this show is about aliens, extraterrestrials, anywhere they may be. We search them out, dig them up, and talk about them in film, the old TV, video games, comic books, science, and in real life. And how we do it, it's 3 sections, basically, in this show. It's the news, the sightings feature, and our picks for the week. That's our entertainment picks, things we've watched, listened to, played, or read. And if you ever want to watch us live on the internet, a couple of ways going about it. You can follow us on Twitter, Google Plus, or Facebook, and we'll send out a notification going, hey, we're live, recording now. Or you can watch us later on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/galacticnetcasts. And I want to thank all of our recent subscribers. We get about 2 new subscribers every day on our YouTube channel, which is awesome.
Oh, sweet.
Nice.
We are slowly, progressively growing the YouTube channel, and that is awesome. And while I have you all here, I want to talk about something real quick before we start the news. We are trying to get our Patreon campaign juiced up a little bit, our Patreon balance every month. Patreon, if you don't know what it is, it's a crowdfunding campaign. People donate. They say, hey, I'm going to give you $2 a month or $3 a month to go to whatever cause you may have. And our particular thing that we're trying to raise money for is our operational expenses, like web hosting. Our website needs a home. It has a home. We pay a certain amount every month for it, and we need money for that. Or we're thinking about moving our audio from a free service to a paid service because it's more reliable when you pay for something, right? So that's what we're doing right now. We're trying to get up to a $30 a month total. So what we want you to do is go to Patreon, patreon.com/Galactic Netcasts, and give as little as $1 a month. And we've got something special planned for October 1st. Our other podcast,
What?
yeah, October 1st.
Oh.
Our other podcast, the Sci-Fi Geeks Club, is having a return visit by author Andy Weir. If you are like, hey, that name sounds familiar, it's because he is the author of a very famous book that is being turned into, or was turned into, a movie, and it's being released on October 2nd. It's called The Martian, starring Matt Damon, directed by Ridley Scott, and he's the guy that wrote the book that was the inspiration for the movie. So we're having him on the Sci-Fi Geeks Club. So
For a second time.
Yeah, for a second time, yeah. So not only was it cool to have him the first time around, but we're getting him another time. I can't believe he actually said, hey, I'll come on your show again.
And the interview that we're having with him is the day before the movie premieres.
Yes.
Which seems to be even more ridiculous because you think, oh, movie premieres are the next day. He's probably got to fly to such and such, and he doesn't have time for that. But by golly, he had time for it, and he said, I'm going to spend it with you guys, and that's really cool.
That's the kind of guy he is. He's a really
Yes.
nice guy. He's not full of himself. He doesn't have a big head. Hollywood hasn't changed him yet.
I don't think it will. He's so
No.
down to earth.
Yeah. So what we're doing is anybody who pledges a certain amount between now and October, actually, it would be 30 days of September, right? So the 29th, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on September 29th. That is the deadline for you to make some kind of donation to our Patreon account. It can be just $1 a month, and we ask you that you keep giving. Just don't say, I'm going to give, and then just do it for the month and then withdraw it. Please, if you like what we do, continue your support by, donating that $1 or $2 or $3 a month. And we're going to draw from all the people who gave to our Patreon account between now and then, and one person will get to be a guest on that same podcast with Andy Weir, author of The Martian. How cool is that?
So it's your opportunity to chit-chat with the guy who's releasing probably what's going to be the biggest movie of the late summer, early fall, if not dominating fall to winter.
Until Star Wars Episode 7 comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
And that movie will dominate everything.
Yes.
That will dominate the universe. But until that happens, The Martian's going to be awesome. The previews I've seen make it look fantastic. And he has said that Matt Damon is the epitome, is the embodiment of Mark Watney, the main character from The Martian. So it's pretty cool that he's saying that. I saw a panel or an interview that Andy was on with Matt Damon and Ridley Scott and a couple of astronauts, actually, and it was really awesome. He talked about how Matt Damon was the embodiment of that character. So that bodes well for the translation from the book into the movie. So again, please go, if you can, help us. Patreon.com/Galactic Netcasts. One person drawn randomly from the people that have given during the month of September will have a chance to be a guest on that podcast with Andy Weir. So it could be you.
Woohoo.
Okay, let's start talking about the week's news. Here we go.
In the news.
And speaking of Mars, hey, Brad, you have a Mars story.
I absolutely do. So what's been very interesting is the Curiosity rover is still out there working hard, as one does.
Works hard for the money, taking pictures of the Mars. Sorry.
So you better treat it right, is what we're saying, really. And for the amount of money that they spent on landing that small SUV on Mars, it's got to work hard for that money. And it is. And this story comes from CNN. I can't recall the last time that we grabbed a story from CNN.
What?
Yeah, I know. Like, quote unquote, legit news source, yo.
It's not the Huffington Post?
No, it's not the HuffPo or the Weekly World News. No, This is the CNN. The title of this story is Bizarre Mars Photos, Signs of Life or Signs the Internet Has Lost Its Mind.
I'm gonna side on the second part.
I am going to side with the latter as well. For most of us Earthlings, the photos of Mars taken by the Curiosity rover reveal little more than a desolate red landscape inhabited mostly by rocks. Lots and lots of rocks. But to the more imaginative minds, those aren't ordinary rocks. That's no moon. That's a space station. No. They're signs that alien life is on the planet. For years, eagle-eyed conspiracy theorists have been trawling through the photos beamed back to Earth by NASA probes and discovering mysterious objects that they say prove the existence of extraterrestrial activity on Mars. Seeming to be a world where lizards, mermaids, traffic lights, jelly donuts, and a statue of Barack Obama all apparently coexist in the dusty expanses of the red planet. And honestly, in this story, they have links. And if you go check the show notes, we'll have a link to this story. And there are, honest to God, links to each of the lizards, the mermaids, the traffic light. They are links to the individual photos that people are saying, see, they had traffic lights on Mars. So obviously, see, they foretold that the Barack Obama was going to wreck all of mankind with his socialist ways.
Wait a second. You know what? I just thought of an idea. Maybe, this is a theory, maybe Mars is actually the Earth, but in a different dimension. Like that's the future Earth, but on a different dimensional plane. And that's just the remnants of our society and our culture.
That's so trippy.
I'm kind of surprised that the lights kind of held up. And the jelly donuts.
Oh, the jelly donut
Especially
is
the jelly
amazing.
donuts.
The glaze didn't harden at all after billions of years. Who knew?
Yeah.
Way to go, Krispy Kreme.
In reality, they're probably all just weirdly shaped rocks. But why spoil the fun? The latest arrival, as it were, is the sighting this week of a spaceship, or at least a spaceship-looking rock that UFO buffs believes crash landed on Mars. I found this anomaly in the latest Curiosity rover photos. The black object looks like a crashed UFO, writes Scott C. Waring on the UFO Sightings Daily website. Now, I am going to, if you are on YouTube, I'm going to do a screen share here of the UFO Sightings Daily website, which looks like it's stuck in the early 2000s. And here you go. Here are the photos which they say prove that there is a ship that crash landed on Mars.
So if you're not watching the video version of this podcast, you're missing out right now.
Yes.
Although I don't see pictures yet on the screen.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Google Hangouts being weird, as it often does. Oh, there you go.
Okay. So, there it is. You're seeing, here's a zoomed up, or actually blown up section of this picture that I've just scrolled down to, where there's the quote-unquote crashed spaceship. Now, the thing to kind of note here is that here's a portion of the rover. That ship must be very tiny.
When you put it in perspective like that, yeah.
Maybe it was we did that story of the 5-inch tall aliens. Maybe that lived in
somebody's head.
That lived inside of somebody's head. Yeah, they were surgically removed. Yep. So yeah, there you go. So back to the story here. There. The craft is only about 2.5 to 3 meters across, so it probably only held a few passengers. Since many of the figures we found on Mars are about 5 to 8 centimeters tall, we can conclude that his ship could carry about 20 to 40 passengers. Okay. Far out indeed, but not quite as far out as the discovery of the giant Martian crab in early August, or the strange woman peering down at Curiosity rover last month, or the levitating rock in June. One NASA scientist says there's a perfectly good explanation for these sightings, and thank God, the voice of reason. We have color HD cameras on this rover that far exceed anything ever sent to the planet before. And yet, in order to find these things that kind of trick your brain into thinking it's a mermaid or whatever, you do have to zoom in where it's kind of a fuzzy shadow at that point. This is from Ashwin Vasavada, a scientist who works on the Mars rover project. Vasavada is alluding to the phenomenon known as pareidolia, in which your brain recognizes a familiar object or pattern even though it's not actually there. So like when people, of course now we're in the digital age, but back in my day when you'd watch the television and you'd get the fuzzy screen, people would stare at it for long periods of time and they could make out objects that they could see from time to time. And it's that same process. If you look at something long enough, your brain is going to want to make it look like a familiar object, and that's what they're saying is happening here.
Well, yeah, I mean, our brains tend to naturally do that. I don't think it's something that we need to try or look at for a long period of time, because I mean, like,
but the longer you look at it, the more you convince yourself that it's the thing.
Yeah. So it's like a Rorschach test on Mars.
Sort of, yeah.
It's one big Rorschach test.
and this is more of a kind of an evolutionary thing where for the sake of survival, you need to be able to recognize patterns and recognize them quickly to see if something is dangerous or not. So this is something that is just kind of built into our biology, as it were, the wiring in our brains. Let's see. It explains why people see the man in the moon, Jesus in their lunch, and there's a link to a picture of somebody who found Jesus in their lunch, or even a tiny woman wandering around Mars. Vasavada remembers her well. That photo was up in a place we were studying, he said, a place we call a geological contact, where there is a lot of sandstone next to mud that formed at the bottom of an ancient lake. Now, 3 billion years after that happened, little drifts of sand are flowing down the hill. When you zoom in and look at and kind of look at the light and the shadows there, it does look like there's a little figure of a woman. But she would be a few inches tall and hasn't moved in months, so we don't think that's what it is. I like that little side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
She's been running around.
I saw that same interview on a news channel here in Canada. Same quote. It was pretty. I laughed out loud the couple times I saw it.
But what about the space rat that so obviously crouched amidst the rubble in this photo? And again, in the show notes, there'll be a link to the actual story where you can see that image. We have no evidence of Martian iguanas or rats at this time, he said. One of the best things we found is that Mars could support life, but if anything, we think it's microbial life that's possible at this time. Things like rats and iguanas would be way further up the food chain that we think Mars may ever have gotten to. For Vasavada, the weirdest thing about the thousands of photos taken by Curiosity is how they're not really weird at all. The thing that keeps coming back to me every single day is how unweird it is, how much it looks like Earth, he says. It's just fascinating that on Mars, even today, you can see the landscapes formed in similar ways that deserts and other places on Earth formed. It's kind of mind-blowing. Not as mind-blowing as, finding a Martian, of course, as Vasavada urges patience. We are working our way to answer what is a very difficult scientific question, he says. It's unfortunately not going to be as easy as seeing a mermaid in a picture. I like this guy.
Yeah. And people have way too much time in their hands too, because they're like taking hours out of their day to search those pictures for any sign, and it's just the more it happens, the more it encourages people to try to find things.
No, agreed. And the more you look for something, the more you're going to find something. So
that crab was pretty convincing. I was really kind of siding with the idea that it might be real for a while. I'm like, that actually does look like a crab.
We're going to do a screen share here again, YouTube viewers. Crabzilla, as it's called.
Hang on. Okay, go ahead.
So there it is. Let's see if they... Yeah, here's a much larger blow-up view of this particular item. But again, light and shadow does play tricks on you.
And what would be making that? It's so detailed.
Yeah, it's it is very, very peculiar, and it's going to be one of those things where if they actually do deem it necessary to investigate further, they'll just basically turn the rover's camera and zoom in and get a clearer shot of it, and we'll all go, "Oh, well, yeah, of course it was that," and it's not going to be a giant motionless space crab.
Maybe he just died and just stayed there.
Yeah, he wedged his I mean, look at if this were a space crab. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like 9 or 10 limbs.
Well, you've seen science fiction movies.
Sure.
Some pretty crazy creatures in those stories.
But there's been no water on that planet for so long that there's no way that something like that could. It would have. If it were organic, it wouldn't have stayed.
Yeah, that's true. I just think looks very much like a crab, and that's the one that I've seen that's like, oh, I can actually see it.
I mean, it's fascinating and it's funny, and of course, there's a YouTube video of the quote unquote strange woman. Let's see if I can.
You gonna try to play it?
I don't think I'm going to get audio at this time, but so here is, I'm going to back this up a little bit.
Yeah, I see him. Or I see her. There she is.
Yeah. And here they've kind of moved it. But it would be like a ghost woman. It doesn't, because they're not doing time-lapsed. They're saying there's a painting of a rock on a rock. It's just...
Well, maybe it's a doll. Maybe it's a Barbie doll.
See, that proves that they're actually, filming all this on a location in the like Nevada desert or something.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, it's good for a laugh, at least.
It is. And, it's an interesting view of the human psyche and how a great object lesson as to how the human mind tries to bring order to things that it sees and tries to make it into something that it really isn't. So.
And how imaginative we all are too. That's another whatever.
Yeah, once you go, oh, those are jelly donuts on Mars, you really need to. That's a stretch.
Yeah,
maybe they're hungry.
I can't think of a donut place that actually delivers.
Yeah.
If you do know of one, you can contact us at Galactic Netcasts at galacticnetcasts.com or gmail.com. Galacticnetcasts at gmail.com, and let us know, are there any donut delivery places where you live?
Yes. I would love to have donuts delivered. That'd be the most awesomest thing ever.
It would be pretty cool.
I would be incredibly huge.
Yes. We all would. All right. Thank you, Brad. That was a great story. Let's move on to another crazy one. And the minute I saw this, I'm like, we got to talk about this, because this harkens back to the early days of the alien invasion, when we used to get those cool stories off the Weekly World News website all the time.
Yeah, when they actually put content up on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And not just keep reposting the same articles.
Okay, so Russians shoot down alien UFO over Iran. The information is contained in an alleged leaked report originating from the Russian Ministry of Defense, or MOD for short. The report allegedly reveals that military personnel have been deployed in Iran to work with the Islamic Republic's counterparts to sort out the massive debris that resulted from the shooting down of an alien UFO on July 31st. Wait, it gets better. Hang on to your hats, people. On August 7th, the Inquisitor reported that NASA and other global government agencies were covering up the incident out of fear that it could cause panic ahead of an asteroid impact apocalypse that doomsday theorists predict will happen in September, or on September 23rd. According to the alleged leaked Russian MOD report, the Russian authorities suspect that the ETs operating an alien satellite were working secretly with certain possibly rogue elements of the U.S. military. Okay, there's a lot going on in this story. There's the asteroid impact apocalypse story. there's the aliens in a satellite, not just a regular ship, but a satellite working with rogue elements of the U.S. military. Let's bring on some more craziness here. The Russian Aerospace Defense Forces first identified the alien UFO on June 29th after it detected another UFO that entered the Earth's atmosphere over Texas. The alien UFO was apparently monitoring the Jade Helm military exercise in the state. If you're familiar with recent conspiracy theories, you'll be very familiar with Jade Helm. Basically, people thinking that the U.S. government is doing these military exercises to actually gain control of
Texas, which is
Texas,
a state we already own.
Yeah.
What?
There's they're using Walmarts as a gateway to an underground facility of some kind, I think.
I don't know. It was like a practice run on how to take over the rest of the state through martial law. And I mean, really, do they not realize how many bases there are to begin with in Texas? They could easily take over the state and do martial law. They don't need to do these trial runs out in the middle of West Texas and whatnot. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, people are nuts.
Texas, why do you do this to me?
And in America, we're armed and nuts. So
and why would the aliens be monitoring the Jade Helm? What's it to them? Who cares?
Well, it's like a soap opera.
Well, you know, if they're working with rogue elements of the U.S. military, perhaps they want to see what the rest of the non-rogue U.S. military is up to.
There you go.
See? I got my tinfoil hat at the ready.
What they're doing, comparing and contrasting?
Yes.
Okay. So the Russians noted that the alien UFO was the same type as the UFO piloted by a 9-foot-tall Nordic alien that landed near the Russian city of Voronezh on September 27th, 1989. The alleged Russian MOD reports says that the UFO could be part of an alien fleet that reportedly flies from an underwater base off the coast of Puerto Rico.
Aguadilla,
Puerto Rico. There's a lot going on in the story because you've got an underground base. There's almost too much going on in the story. You got an underground UFO base off of the Puerto Rican coast. You have Nordic aliens somehow involved. You've got Jade Helm. What else? You got the ETs.
Rogue U.S. military.
Yes. The ETs somehow operating a satellite in orbit.
Yes.
Then you've got the asteroid impact apocalypse doomsday theory. So this is jam-packed full of the nuts.
Plenty of nuts here.
Yeah. So I thought this was very interesting. I mean, there was a report of some kind of like meteor, or am I saying that? Meteor or meteorite flying over.
So meteor would be what you see in the sky, like a falling star. Meteorite is what hits the ground, and then meteoroid is what's in space.
Every time Anessa has to explain this.
It's okay. It helps me remember because, you know, you don't use it, you lose it. So it's good practice for me.
Remember, a meteorite goes right in your pocket.
Okay.
Like right in your pocket. Right in your pocket.
Okay. I will use that next time to deceive.
Meteor right in your pocket.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Meteor right in your pocket.
So again, to recap, a meteor is one that is flying into orbit or into the atmosphere, right?
Correct.
And then a meteorite is one that hits the ground.
Yes.
And then a meteoroid is one in space.
Correct.
All right.
Bam!
So this could be based on an actual thing. I mean, there was an actual meteor flying over Iran or that part of the world that was reported and did apparently cause some damage in the country from the blast the what do you call it? The sonic
boom.
Yes, thank you. So, if you want to read that, because there's more to the story than that, because there might be some more craziness. You can check out the link that we will post in the show notes for more on the Russians shooting down the alien UFO / satellite over Iran and everything else that is crazy in the world, all in one story. Okay, story 3 of 3. Anessa, what do you got?
I have a long one. Yay!
Yeah, it is.
And this is actually kind of the opposite of what you've been talking about as far as evidence of UFO activity and conspiracies and whatnot. This article is actually written by Seth Shostak, and he is a senior astronomer and director at the Center for Study Research and a contributor to SF Gate, San Francisco Gate, their website. So to me, this guy seems like he has a valid opinion on things, on UFOs, on aliens, whether or not they actually exist, because he does work for SETI. And the article is titled UFOs, The Trail is Stale. Look at you go rhyming, Mr. Seth. And he goes on to say that one thing that strikes me about claims of alien visitation is that so much of the evidence is musty and fusty. Every day, I get stories and articles from people around the world who aggregate UFO news, but much of it is not news, it's olds. The few alternatives to this vintage archive are contemporary photos and videos of vague lights in the sky, low resolution and low confidence material that isn't likely to sway many scientists. The good stuff seems to be the old stuff. To better judge if this is really true, I trawled the web for listings of the best UFO cases. I quickly collected nearly 100 events that were considered worthy, of which 60 were unique, in the sense of not being repeats. Ergo, the Roswell incident appears on most of these lists. So what's going on? I then plotted the year in which each of these unique events took place, virtually all since 1940. By far, the majority occurred in the first half of the last 76 years. So first half of the 76 years is where we get the good stuff that we can't seem to let go of. So what's going on? Our technology for documenting alien spacecraft, if you assume they're real, is substantially better than even a few decades ago. And yet the UFO photos are still as blurry and muddy as ever. You'd think that a few people could make snaps that aren't ambiguous or hoaxed, and I haven't mentioned the surveillance provided by the 1,100 active satellites in orbit above our heads. Now, some people deflect these puzzling facts by stating that excellent evidence for cosmic visitors really exists, but is kept under wraps by the government. Can anyone explain how beings from other worlds have managed to arrange their itineraries so that only governments are solidly aware of their presence? Maybe there are other explanations for why the so-called good evidence for visiting aliens is as stale as Gothic croutons. One obvious possibility is that the extraterrestrials are just plain done with us. They've abducted enough folks to satisfy their curiosity about our anatomies. The Cold War has ended, and so has their fascination with our nuclear missile silos. They've tried visiting New Mexico, but that didn't work out. So maybe they've just declared mission accomplished and gone away. That would be analogous to Charles Darwin's visit to the Galapagos Islands. After he probed, bottled, and cataloged some of the natives, he weighed anchor and withdrew. But here's another possibility drawn from a similar experience with SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. In the early days of SETI, scientists would record cosmic static on their computer tape or even paper. They would then look at these recordings at leisure. In the 1970s, this ex post facto observing scheme produced many candidate signals, hits that looked at first, and that might even have been alien transmissions. However, none of these candidates could be found a second time. Consequently, they didn't qualify as solid detections. They're ambiguous at best. However, many of today's SETI experiments can weed out interference and other causes of false alarms immediately. And that has led to an interesting situation. When you have real-time ability to verify signals, you don't end up with a drawer full of, quote, interesting cases. In other words, as technology improved, the number of enticing candidate signals went down. In science speak, the false alarm rate decreased. It wasn't because any alien stopped broadcasting. It was because we stopped being fooled. Maybe this phenomenon explains why, as our cameras have gotten better, the number of interesting UFO cases have lessened. For SETI, the really compelling detection is still to come. One good signal detection could easily surpass the credibility of dozens of intriguing candidates from 4 decades ago. The same should apply to the folks who argue that some UFOs are actually alien craft. They should come forward with a truly great piece of evidence, a trump card that would allow them to stop playing the weak hand of the past. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting.
What an astute analysis. And I have 3 points. Astute analysis. He did a ton of data mining for this article, right? He looked at a bunch of different reports, and he is quite the wordsmith.
He is. And the article is longer than what I read. So if you want to read more, I recommend going to was it the San Francisco Gate, sfgate.com. So no, I thought it was really interesting that he kind of pointed that out, because a lot of what we talk about as far as the bigger cases are going to be from 30, 40, 50 years ago or more. And yeah, even if we do see unidentified flying objects, not necessarily extraterrestrial, we're really crap at getting video and images. And there's so many people with tripods and DSLRs and cell phones, and you would think they'd be able to like prop them up on the car or something, like a steady surface, and take a picture, but no, not really.
No, the
apparently they like wave their arms around when they're trying to record UFOs, and they're like, it's only a UFO.
The cameras on smartphones are fantastic these days. I don't know why we can't get decent pictures of UFOs and aliens.
Yeah, and there's so many people that do nighttime photography and even time lapse. And I mean, none of them have really gotten UFOs. They get satellites, they get airplanes, they get meteors, but no weird, crazy pattern in the night sky from dancing lights or what have you, UFOs.
The only thing that I can think of is it's something so damaging to our culture and our society that would be the only reason why some government or the world government, all the governments in the world, are holding back this big secret. Like, that's the only thing I can think of why they're not telling us if there are aliens and if the aliens have actually been in contact with us.
Yeah, but it's one of those things, like, how do they manage to get only the government to be aware of their existence?
That's true. Yeah.
And he in the actual article, he says that it's just goofy. He's like, that's goofy. And then yeah, he also brings up the fact that there's over 1,000 satellites hanging out in space, and you would think that one of them would have noticed, hey, there's this weird object that just flew in front of my signal that I'm transmitting back to Earth.
There's a lot of conspiracy theorists that would take issue with that, saying, hey, the ones that will put on the web a video of something that passed by the International Space Station, or something that a camera somewhere picked up this thing either entering or exiting our atmosphere.
Yeah, but I don't know. I thought his observations were kind of interesting, and a lot of what we refer to, I mean, we do mention more recent sightings and stuff, but the ones that really stick with everyone are the older cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
And it does kind of make you wonder why. Because I mean, there's a lot more people now, so you would think that they would, somebody out there would see something.
But remember last week on the podcast, my sighting was that one in Texas, with
right?
Those multiple witnesses over the entire night. Something like that really makes you think, like, maybe it was something.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was some sort of weather inversion.
The government would love to hire you, Anessa.
Swamp gas.
I mean, the government of the 1950s and 60s. You'd be a great
Oh
employee.
yeah, like I would have been a great woman in black.
Yes.
A great PR person.
All right.
It makes me think of like Haven and all the TV show.
Yes.
And all the weird happenings that go on, and you've got the law enforcement, the police chief, and then you have the two guys that run like a little local paper that just have to come up with all sorts of excuses to cover up what really happened. I mean, you can't say that it was some poor cursed person that caused this house to explode or disappear, or someone that spontaneously combust. So it's like, oh, leaky gas line. Yep, another leaky gas line. Sorry about that.
I wonder if Seth is a fan of the X-Files or not. To him, it's probably just a sitcom, right?
Probably. I mean, I would guess he's probably, he's probably watched it at least a little bit. I don't know if it's like his favorite show, but I mean, people have their guilty pleasures. You know that it's fake. You can easily find holes in some of the scientific logic, and explanations and actions and stuff, but you still enjoy watching it.
And
Seth might be the same way. It's just a guilty pleasure.
Even though you may believe a certain thing or not believe a certain thing, all of our minds are still open to possibilities. Like, we make fun of crazy conspiracies on this podcast, or we're like, oh yeah, right, but we still have open minds, like for the possibility of these things may be happening, so maybe he's the same way.
Yeah, I'm not gonna just be like, oh, that totally didn't happen, but if the evidence is there, then I'd be like, well, maybe that's a possibility that this may have happened. I'm not gonna say no, but I'm not gonna rule it out completely.
All right. Thank you, guys. Great stories this episode. Before we move on to the sightings segment, we would love your thoughts on either Nessa's story, what do you believe, my story, or Brad's story, or anything else we've covered on this episode or other episodes of the Alien Invasion podcast. You can leave us feedback by calling our voicemail number, 805-328-3966. That's 805-328-3966. Or email galacticnetcasts@gmail.com, galacticnetcasts@gmail.com, or go directly to the source, our website, gncasts.com. We have a contact page, or just click that little tab on the left-hand side and record your message through the website. Okay. Speaking of that sightings, let's do it, man.
Please identify the craft you witnessed.
A black, triangular, three-dimensional shape, huge, just flying, hovering mimics.
Shaped like almost like between an egg and like a teardrop.
Two long cylinder objects flying over me.
It had a dome. I could see the occupants in
It appeared
it.
to be rotating, and it was circular to disc shape, and it hovered for maybe about 5 minutes.
And it looks like we've got a Texas twofer going. We had one last week. Our sighting is again in Texas this week. Brad, what do you got?
Well, I'm kind of wondering if this isn't the same thing that was a part of the Iran story.
Oh, wouldn't that be a weird coinkydink?
Yeah. So
well,
this...
Okay, go ahead.
August 7th.
Are you looking back at my story?
No, yeah, I'm looking back to see if the times match up, because it looks like they might. This story from Texas was reported August 23rd.
Yeah. Well, no. September 23rd is the date that they mentioned for the asteroid impact. June 29th is the date where the Russian Aerospace Defense Forces.
Okay, so no, this took place a month after the The Texas UFO. It would seem that there's a lot of activity in Texas.
Yeah, it's a big place.
There's got a lot of sky there.
There is a lot of sky there. All right, here we go. Texas witness stops to watch hovering triangle.
No.
A Texas witness in Killeen reported watching a triangle-shaped UFO hovering over a nearby park for 15 minutes before moving away, according to testimony in case 69803 from the MUFON UFO network. Witness reporting database. The witness was driving home from work and traveling along Rancier Avenue at 3:15 a.m. on August 23rd of 2015, and was quoted as saying, "I saw a strange light hovering a little past the park. At first I thought it could be a helicopter since I live in Killeen right next to Fort Hood, and there are always helicopters in the air. But as the witness moved toward the object, it was obvious it was not a helicopter. As I got closer, I could tell it was a triangle-shaped craft and not a helicopter. I couldn't hear any noise from it." And if any of you have had the opportunity to hear a helicopter, Anessa and I live not too far away from a flight to life path for one of the hospitals.
Yeah, and I used to live less than a mile away from a hospital, so I frequently heard the care flight landing and taking off.
I mean, unless it's a military helicopter with some kind of stealth technology that can reduce the sound of the rotor blades spinning, yeah, that's not happening. Let's see. The witness pulled into the park and stopped to watch the object. It stayed in the same place for about 15 minutes and then slowly moved over the park. I opened the sunroof in my car and watched it slowly fly over my head. Then it changed direction from heading west to going parallel with Rancier to going southwest. A few seconds after it made a turn, it vanished. Texas MUFON is investigating this case that was reported on August 26th of 2015. No images or videos were included with the report. Killeen is a city in Bell County, Texas, population 127,921. Salute. Please remember that most UFO sightings can be explained as something natural or man-made. The above quotes were edited for clarity.
They have a nice little planetarium there. Just saying.
Nice.
You really read the whole thing, didn't you, Brad?
I did, because the whole thing is fascinating. There's a lot of little details there.
It is. I was about to say, it's very detailed, isn't it?
Yes. I don't know what else to say about that. Either, we don't have an indication of the size, so, maybe it was a quadcopter. I mean, those are becoming far more popular. They are very, very silent, and we've seen in the past how they've been used to promote new planetariums. You remember that story from a while back?
Yep.
A long time ago.
Yeah, they flew that quadcopter over the baseball game, and it was the quadcopter was in the shape of the new planetarium that they were opening, and the planetarium is shaped to look kind of like a spacecraft. So
that's a good social experiment. Let's see how many people think it's an actual UFO.
How many people
panic?
Freak out. No, we aren't coming to kill you and take over your planet. Come to the planetarium. It'll be fun.
That's actually not knowing the size. That can be a thing where if it's too high up in the air, the farther away an object is, the harder it is to determine what the size of the object is, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can guess how far it is, but if you're looking at an object that's not incredibly huge to begin with, then you'd be like, oh man, it was huge, but it was so far away. Or, oh, it was tiny, but it was actually huge and kind of way far off. Yeah, it just perspective.
And the thing with not making any noise, drones do make noise.
Yeah, they aren't quiet.
Mine makes a hell of a lot of noise. I don't know about the newer, fancier ones. They may be quieter.
Not really. You're talking about like the little quadcopter things that fly around with a camera attached to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my old boss had a couple of different incarnations of them, and I mean they weren't quiet. I mean it sounded like me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't quiet.
But
You knew that it was there.
But if they were up in the air far enough, farther away up in the air, you may not hear it as well.
I guess it might also depend if there's maybe a little bit of a breeze to kind of carry the noise away.
That's true.
But if there's not a breeze, then you'll at least hear something, I would think, even if it was a faint wee sort of humming noise.
Huh. I don't know.
So I haven't really been around the little drone much. I remember my old boss was doing some filming around campus and out at the observatory, and I was there for part of it, but I mean, I could still hear it off in the distance. So maybe there's a quieter model? I don't know.
Did they say anything about the speed of this thing? It's maybe
2 miles an hour.
Maybe one of those controllable like helium balloon things with lights. That's probably not the best description or name for it, but I'm just imagining some helium-filled balloon apparatus with lights on it that you could control in some way.
It could be like those little flying sharks, inflatable flying sharks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who knows?
All right. Or it could be UFO, or it could be an alien craft.
Well, UFO doesn't necessarily mean alien.
I'm saying alien, Vanessa. Okay. I'm laying it down. It was an alien craft. All right. Thank you, Brad. Good pick. Good, not pick. Good sighting this week. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're about to do picks, and these are things that we have listened to, watched, read, or played in the last week, relating somehow to aliens. And it looks like, according to our document, our show prep document, Anessa is up first.
I'm up first with a short flick called The Landing. Ooh. And the little synopsis in IMDb says, a man returns to the Midwest farm of his childhood on a desperate mission to unearth the horrifying truth of what landed there in the summer of 1960. You can tell, fairly quickly there's the whole Cold War thing going on. It shows the man that returns to his Midwestern farm. It shows him as a young boy, and he lives on the farm with his father. It's implied that his mother's no longer there. I'm guessing she's probably dead. They've got like her photo up, and he kind of looks at the images, and there's that pause that kind of lets you know that he misses his mom, wherever she might be, dead or alive. The father is very bitter about not having been able to go to war, and I don't recall if he specifies why, but he essentially didn't get picked. And he really wanted to be a rifleman, and his son was playing with these little toy soldiers, and he had a little red soldier, and the father picks up the red soldier, and he's like, you can't have a war without an enemy. And as he's telling him this, there's this object that comes falling from the sky and lands in the field, and they don't know what it is. The father goes out to investigate, and the little boy stays behind at the home. And he sees his dad taking something to the barn. He doesn't know what it is. And the next day, the father's like, it's a meteor. It was just a meteorite. Don't worry about it. Don't go looking for it. You're not going to find anything. Well, the little boy goes out into the field, and he finds something. He finds a craft. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I really think that people should spend the 17 minutes of their day and watch this movie. Brad got to see about half of it, and
It was good.
It was pretty good.
I've
And
seen
I don't
this.
want to spoil anything.
I've seen this, and it's very good.
Yeah, and I highly recommend it. It's really great, and I don't want to really spoil anything. Because obviously in the image of the landing, you're going to see the little boy find this circular craft. So, spoiler alert, he finds a circular craft. But yeah, I'd recommend that you look it up. I found it through the Google on the Vimeo, I believe. So, yeah.
All right.
Check it out.
Yeah.
The Landing.
We'll have the link in the show notes, and you can watch it at your leisure.
Lingerie.
All right. I'm going back to the Face Off well. I have recommended, or I've had a Face Off episode as a pick before, and I had to again because this episode, it aired this week. It's called Extraterrestrial Enterprise. Huh? Enterprise? Do you know where I'm going?
I wonder
with
what it could be about. Like,
so
are we talking businesses here?
Maybe not. Here's a quick synopsis. The artists create retro-style aliens for a foundation challenge. That's like a real quick, like, just do a face. They don't have to do like a cowl or anything else. Like, there's no costume involved, just the face. And then they are shocked to learn that their spotlight challenge, they must evolve their character into a modern-day version of the same alien species. So basically, they create this alien being for the Foundation challenge and then evolve it into something even more. And the way they introduced this episode was by bringing Michael Westmore, who is like the mentor on the show. Michael Westmore, if you don't know who he is, he did the makeup for Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Voyager, and I think Star Trek Enterprise. Like, he was the man that pretty much set the tone for Star Trek and certain alien species. And the way they set it up was they had one of the judges is this Neville Page. He created the Klingons for the 2000 or Star Trek Into Darkness. Michael Westmore created the Klingon look for Star Trek The Next Generation. And then one of the other regular judges that's on every episode, she was the one that designed the Klingons from Star Trek The Motion Picture. And the host of Face Off, if you don't know, is Michael Westmore's daughter. So there's a big Star Trek influence already. And then they bring on, as one of the guest mentors for this episode, Jonathan Frakes. So he went around to each of the characters or each of the contestants. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the show before, but Michael Westmore will come into the shop and kind of look at each person's projects and give like recommendations and advice as how they could do it better. So it was Michael Westmore and Jonathan Frakes who seemed like he knew what he was talking about. Like, he had an eye and he already had some knowledge for how all this makeup stuff worked. Okay, if that wasn't good enough, the final judging, a guest judge was none other than Michael Dorn, Worf himself. What? Yeah. So huge Star Trek presence on this episode. You had the makeup artists who developed the Klingons, and then you had number one, Commander Riker, and then you had Michael Dorn as Worf. Hi, my dog is here.
Woof.
Princess, where are you? There you are. Okay. So I thought it was cool, and I couldn't pass up bringing that as my pick this week. Face Off episode Extraterrestrial Enterprise, and we of course will have the link in the show notes. Show notes that you can check it out for yourself. All right, Brad, what's your pick?
All right. I don't remember what my pick is. Oh, yes. I've been trying to do some classic Doctor Who watching, and the episode. Well, actually, it's a 4-episode serial. The thing to remember about Doctor Who, before we got to the Eccleston era in 2005, is that it was serialized. They were 25-minute portions of a program. So they could be 3 25-minute shows or 4, or the last episode in John Pertwee's run, that was 6. So in this particular case, the Carnival of Monsters, which was the 3rd Doctor, John Pertwee, and it was a 4-episode serial, and you can find it on Netflix, which is what I did. Now, it's interesting to note that at the end of Patrick Troughton's tenure as the Doctor, he was banished and to Earth to stay there. And when John Pertwee came on the scene, he got a job working with UNIT on Earth. And so all of the stories take place on Earth up into I think it's the 3 Doctors, where John Pertwee is set free from his earthly banishment, essentially being tied to Earth. But in this particular episode, which is the second to the last storyline of John Pertwee's tenure, the Carnival of Monsters is very interesting in that we find that the Doctor actually did politics on Gallifrey to a certain degree. And the degree that he did it at is that he would pester the council until they did something. And what they did is they got rid of this particular device, essentially, which is a scope. And this scope basically allowed people to view miniaturized species that were inside of this machine. And this machine was probably the size of, gosh, I would say maybe 2 standard cash registers you might see at a fast food restaurant. And the creatures and the environments were inside of the machine, but they were very miniaturized. And with this scope, you could actually flip through these different environments that were set within this machine. And the Doctor and Joe actually end up materialized inside of the machine and miniaturized. And they are stuck on a boat where the same thing seems to happen over and over. It's like a 20-minute to 30-minute loop that they're stuck in, that everybody else is stuck in, and they are kind of free from. So things get progressively more interesting. We find about the person that owns this machine, this throwback to the past that hadn't been destroyed. And we find that the people that are actually normal sized have their own bit of political drama that's going on with this particular person who still has this scope, and the scope is his livelihood. He takes it, he's basically a traveling barker, like a circus show barker, and he travels to different worlds, and he gets money from people to view the scope and see all these wonderful creatures that are housed within the scope. So, like I said, it's 25-minute episodes. There are 4 of them. It's very interesting to see the difference in quality compared to what we see now. Now, Doctor Who is basically hour-long movies, and they are filmed at super high quality. But you watch the Doctor Who episodes from the 70s, which this episode took place in 73, and it was definitely done with equipment that wasn't quite at the quality and the standard that we are now used to with that we would kind of associate with Doctor Who. That said, there are monsters to be found in this particular episode. There are aliens to be found in this particular episode that all have and lend to that wonderful, cheesy, economical, and necessary. The cheese is necessary due to budget constraints, but that doesn't make it any less interesting. And
I think that adds to its charm.
It does. It does. I'm not going to poo-poo classic Who because that's ridiculous. That's definitely a part of the charm and a part of what makes Doctor Who Doctor Who. So, well worth checking it out. And like I said, you can find it on Netflix. And that particular run is called Carnival of Monsters. So I would give it a good 4 flying saucers out of 5. I guess if we're going to stick with my normal grading scale. And there you go. And I'm not sure what Dave is right now, so I hate to pause the show. So you know what?
What?
I'm going to wrap it up.
Is he still there?
No,
Or is he just not on camera?
Something happened with the dog, and he left his little booth area.
No. Interesting.
See, but if I wrap up the show and I miss something, I think he's got another announcement to make. So I'm not going to wrap it up. We're just going to sit and wait. No, not that. No! Yeah, he said he'll be right back. But that was 4 minutes ago. I tried to stretch it out as long as I could.
Well, I guess we could wrap it up, and then if he wants to add anything at the end, it could be his final thought.
Sure. Hey, you can find the Alien Invasion by going to galacticnetcasts.com, and you can watch our episodes at youtube.com/galacticnetcasts. You can search for us on iTunes and Stitcher as well. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review or give us a thumbs up in the case of Stitcher, and review and tell your friends and family about us. Find people, strangers on the street, and tell them how much you love Galactic Netcast shows. Or maybe not. You might get maced in the face. Who knows? Maced in the Face.
Ooh.
See, that's going to be a band name.
Maced in the face.
Maced in the Face.
Right in the face. That's their first album.
That's the first album. You can leave us feedback by emailing galacticnetcasts at see, I keep doing that. galacticnetcasts@gmail.com. That's galacticnetcasts@gmail.com. Or you can leave a voice message by going to galacticnetcasts.com. You can also text the number, and he doesn't have the number on here.
Something like 325
390
or 39. I'm just gonna make up a telephone
390
number.
something 765-309. Jenny, who can I turn to? You give me something I can hold on to. And now Dave's back, and he can save us from floundering here.
We kind of wrapped up the show, but then we got to the part where we recite the phone number, and there's no phone number.
And the number's not there, and I don't remember it.
805?
Like 325, or no, yeah, I guess it's 805-328-3966.
There you go. Got it. All right.
I couldn't get the area code.
So,
I was thinking 3. I don't know.
So
whatever.
where are we at here?
You know what? You should just start over, because I bet you do a better closer than I.
We got to the part where you could leave us feedback by emailing, and then we mentioned the telephone number, but never got to the Galactic Collective.
Okay. All right. So what you want to do is go to our website, gncasts.com, And I think it's on the right now. I moved things around after the redesign. It's on the right-hand side. It says, join the Galactic Collective. And basically, you go to the page and you can pick your level of involvement. So the Galactic Collective is basically our community of listeners, fans, followers, whatever. And you pick your level and you follow us however way you want to follow us. And also, the third highest level, I think it's Galactic Council, is if you are a Patreon backer, you can actually make decisions for us. We'll ask you your opinion on certain things once in a while. So again, go to gncasts.com and become part of the Galactic Collective, either monetarily or just being a part of the community. That's all we ask, is for you to either give us money or spread the word. It's that simple. Doesn't matter which way you go on that. And I guess that's it. Oh, did you guys mention subscribing? No?
No, probably not. Why don't you tell us about subscribing, Dave?
Yes, you can subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher. Just search for The Alien Invasion or Galactic Netcasts. Or just, again, go to our website, gncasts.com, and click on the subscribe tab, and all the information and proper links will be there. All right. Final thoughts. Brad, what do you got?
We're helpers. We're helping.
Nothing. I can't wait for Andy Weir to visit us again on the Sci-Fi Geeks Club.
Yes, and that's a friendly reminder to, again, go to patreon.com/Galactic Netcasts for your chance to be on that podcast with us and Andy. All right. Anessa, what do you got? Final thought. Go.
I'm a helper.
She is.
You're, yeah, I could see that. You got that helper vibe. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. And that's going to do it for this Alien Invasion podcast, a production of Galactic Netcasts, and we will talk to you next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.